Thanks, Dudley. Hello, everyone. Rascal Entertainment's here.
And Mama Entertainments. Welcome to our podcast.
Today we're going to talk about one of Cartoon Network's greatest franchises of all time, Ben 10.
We'll be covering the first three series of the franchise, the classic Ben 10, Ben 10 Alien Force, and Ben 10 Ultimate Alien. We've only seen a few episodes of Omniverse, so we'll only discuss those episodes.
And a big shout out to my alpha twin, Bennet Dudley, for making that awesome intro for us.
Woohoo! Thanks, Dudley!
Yeah, that was just awesome.
It was. So today we're talking about, as we mentioned, Ben 10, developed and produced by real-life superhero Dwayne McDuffie, and created by media franchise Man of Action, and produced by Cartoon Network Studios.
A lot of people behind this one.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Man of Action, they do a lot of action cartoons, like Ben 10, the Generator Rex, and they're now doing, Big Hero 6?
Right, but let's talk about Dwayne McDuffie, the awesome and greatly missed Dwayne McDuffie.
Yeah, and I didn't know what this guy looked like until years later, and then didn't find out till after Ultimate Alien ended that he passed away, and they showed at the very end of the series that the last episode was dedicated to him, and I couldn't believe he was gone.
Right.
And then I saw all the work he did, and he with Static Shock. He wrote Static Shock. He wrote on Justice League
Unlimited.
Yeah, Justice League Unlimited. And he co-founded Milestone Media, which is another popular comic book company. It was just so much that he did, and I didn't even know he was behind it at the time.
Yeah, and fortunately he died pretty young. He was only 49. He was an American comic book writer, and as we just mentioned, he did television. And one of the great things that he's done to leave his legacy is he created the minority-owned and operated comic book company Milestone Media. So you can type it in online, do a keyword search and find out more about that company, and even support it. Get some of the comics and just see what great work they're doing that just leaves a legacy to Dwayne McDuffie. And he also earned quite a few Eisner Award nominations for his work. How many was it?
He won 3.
3. And a host of other awards that we won't mention here because it'll take a while. Also, he did All-Star Superman.
Oh, yeah. I forgot he did some of the movies, too, for DC. And I wasn't sure which one. So that's one. I think another Justice League movie, I think it was Crisis on Tour. If it was not that, I apologize.
I think you're right. I think it is. But there's not a kid alive who doesn't know about, either if they know him by name or they just know characters he's created, shows he's created, and your favorite, Static Shock.
Right. Now, I hadn't seen that show in very long time. It's been years since I seen it. I saw it when I was very little, when it came on WB Kids, and then I never saw it again. And then years later, they talk about on the internet and say how it was an iconic show, pretty much ahead of its time. And then finally it's on DVD finally after 100 years, so I bought the first season already and loved it. Still was a fun show, still had great lessons. It broke a lot of
stereotypical ways that comics were being done and cartoon shows were being done.
Right, and that's what usually McDuffie wrote for a lot of his characters and his shows. They were always supposed to be different, not just limited to one thing that everyone writes.
Right. And another couple of his television works includes, he wrote some episodes for Teen Titans and What's New Scooby-Doo.
And you can tell when he's written it because it's just so beyond what should be done for a kid's show, or supposedly called a kid's show. And the writing, the themes, the characters, the lessons, the atmosphere of the shows, they're always something that you think it should be for older audiences, but they're always done for kids.
Right.
But you can still appreciate it years later.
Definitely. And just want to point one thing out. He was an African-American illustrator and comic book writer. And I think because of that, it gave him such a different outlook on how he wanted characters to be. And he had mentioned in a quote, which we can't quote directly, but it was to the gist of, if someone is Asian or African American or Latino, they can't just be represented as that, and having a representation of the whole race, because
Right.
then that would be stereotypical. They have to represent all the facets of personality and all the different ways that people are and can be.
Right.
And you would see that as Rascal mentioned, you would see that in his works, and you would see that in his writing, that his main goal was not to have a carbon copy show
Right.
and carbon copy characters, but they were layered, and they were multidimensional in personality and abilities, and
that's why his stuff is so memorable, because it was
Absolutely.
nothing like anything else anyone else had written, and it's not the same. I guess it's easier if you write the same stereotype stuff. It's
Right.
easier for you to write, but it takes a lot to write something different, and it's memorable for that.
Well, we would like to say thank you to Cartoon Network and Man of Action for continuing his legacy with these characters and continuing Ben 10 in whatever incarnation it's in is still a legacy for
Right.
Dwayne McDuffie, and we do thank you for continuing it and not letting his dream die.
And rest in peace.
Amen.
All right, so first we're going to talk about the first series, or the now dubbed the classic,
And Rascal's favorite,
that aired in 2005 and ended in 2008.
Ben 10 Classic.
Yeah, why is it called classic? It's not 100
Okay,
years
original.
old. Why, I'm still wondering why they dub it classic, like Powerpuff Girls classic, because it was better. I'm just kidding.
Well, classic is supposed to apply to anything that's 20 years old or more, but we know that Ben 10 is not yet 20 years old, so
Right.
we'll say original.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I watched this show when I was really little, and I really liked the show. I liked all the aliens and all the adventures they had. It was still one of those comedy shows that had a blend of action. There was a little bit of drama. It was sci-fi.
It was definitely before you were 10.
And it was just really fun. And this is a time where you didn't watch a lot of the shows I did because you were busy working. So eventually you did see this, kind of like with The Last Airbender. And you said, what is that? Those Pokemon!
What is that on his arm?
Yeah,
I
what is
remember.
that? Virus is like, no, Ma, it's alien. They're aliens. They're not creatures. They're not monsters. They're aliens.
And I said, oh, okay.
Right.
I remember.
Although now it's hard to tell the difference because everything looks like everything else. The alien looks
Right.
like a monster or a dwarf or a troll or something.
And it's great that, this show is so different. Well, at the time that it aired, it was so different from anything else on TV. If I'm mistaken, let me know. I don't think there was anything out there that was written or that was airing on networks that had even this basis for the story or characters that were like this. And I always loved the Grandpa Max was the one who was taking them around and taking them with him. He
Right.
was such a wonderful grandpa.
Right.
But there was nothing out there like it
Right.
at the time. You've had lots of copies now, but at that
Yeah.
time it was unique.
Yeah, think about a kid that can turn to 10 different aliens and save the world on a daily basis. That really hadn't been done before, not even for animation. And then I found out originally there were supposed to be different versions of the kid from other dimensions, and then they changed it to aliens. I don't know if that was McDuffie's plan, but I'm glad they made that change because I don't think the original would have done as well because it looked completely different from the kid. And the kid wasn't 10, he was like a teenager. And it looked like it would have been something that was like something else, made you
Right.
think of something else that was out there. But they made it unique by making it a 10-year-old boy and it's a bunch of aliens rather than different versions of himself.
And best friends with his cousin, Gwen, who was the same age.
Yes.
The same age, and again with his grandpa Max. So,
Right.
and
And
like
the,
a little
yeah,
family unit.
yeah, and the whole series, if you haven't seen it, is just about his cousin, his grandpa. They're going on summer vacation across the country, and he finds a watch. You even get a introduction every time with the intro, where it tells you how he got the watch and what he does with it. He saves the world every time, and it's pretty much, if you haven't seen the first episode, you'll get that intro, and you'll know the whole story, even if you're not watching it in order. And that's the basis of the whole show. He just goes around they go around the country on summer vacation. They help people they can and fight aliens and evil wherever it is.
Right.
And it was, a really fun show. I wish we had on DVD. Unfortunately, we don't at this time. But I hope we do get in the future because it's a really fun show to just watch over and over again and to own and to see all the aliens and the fights and how it was a staple for Cartoon Network and for just action comedy shows.
My only complaint would be that you have to buy so many discs in order to get the entire show.
Yeah, I guess like Avatar.
Season 1 or Season 2. Yeah, it's broken up into volumes.
Yeah,
and
part 1, part 2. I'm like, just do the whole season.
And for
that
kids that want to buy it themselves, I mean, it could get pretty expensive. That's the only, caveat I had. I have and had at the time is that you have to buy so many different volumes in order to have the whole series. But let's talk a little bit about Gwen, too. Because she was a very different character at that time.
Right.
Even as a, not only for female character, but being a 10-year-old who was still a kid, who hung out with her cousin and wanted to hang with her grandpa. I mean, come on.
Right.
It's always not cool to hang out with, your parents and your grandparents. But in this animated series, they loved hanging out with him. And that was before they even found out about his secret life.
Right.
And she was really, really brainy.
Right.
So she was different for a female character.
And they will always fight like they were brother and sister. Like, you dweeb. And they would fight. But you knew at different points in the show they did care about each other. Like, I found out in one of the episodes, we watched this one where Ben was in a dreamlike state and he was imagining he had a perfect day and everything was going his way. And usually if it's not his way, they're always fighting about something. And it's hilarious because some of the dialogue they say to each other is just brilliant. And the lines he says is hilarious. And when they had his perfect day, he actually got along with her, and this is what he wants. This is everything he wants. This is where he gets video games, he gets attention, he gets to fight crime. Well, in that one, he gets along with her. He can be as gross as he wants, as crazy as he wants. She gets along with him, still likes him, still cares about him. She still has fun with him. And that was kind of secretly in depth with how he acts with her when it's just a regular thing. And they always, like I said, fight like they're siblings, but he really does care.
Right.
And I know you want to mention the movie, right? When they had the Secret of the Omnitrix movie, which you kind of thought was a finale, but it wasn't. You remember that one?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And they thought he thought she was dead because the alien planes had grabbed her. And he was so upset and angry, and then he found he was alive. He started crying. So you knew he really did care. It wasn't just they fought all the time, and it didn't mean anything.
Well, thank you for Rascal mentioning for my Omnitrix movie.
For mentioning your mention. That's a lot of mention. Honorable mention, I guess.
Thank you. But it was a great movie. And the idea, too, of having movies that would air either before or after a series or a season, I should say.
Yeah, I think
it was something that wasn't being done at that time. There was just so many firsts for this franchise. And as you know, they've had multiple movies we'll discuss, others that came later. But yes, that was a great movie. And it was very sweet because all the bickering, maybe you would have misunderstood that they loved each other, but he was so sad that he thought she was dead. And when he saw her, he's like, Gwen!
Yeah, he was
so
crying
excited.
and he hugged her.
And it was just, it's so sweet. So if you weren't sure, you knew then, all the bickering stuff, like you said, it's brother and sister, but they love each other and they love their grandpa and their grandpa loves them. And amidst all the action and drama and suspense and kick butt, there's the love that's there that I think really helps to solidify the whole story.
Right. And I think my favorite episode of the series, there were so many great ones, really creative ideas, especially with the sci-fi element or just character development. Even the titles were really creative.
Right.
I think my favorite episode, and you might find this a little weird, is Big Fat Alien Wedding. I just absolutely love that episode. I can watch that on loop and never get tired of it. It's where they have to go to one of Grandpa's distant relatives for a wedding, and he's marrying a mud alien. And there's a bunch of her species in the family trying to sabotage the wedding, and Ben has to stop them. And every time he turns into an alien, there's also other members of the family who are alien hunters, so they keep finding every time he turns into an alien, but they don't know he turns into aliens. And it's really hilarious. And of course, it's supposed to be a spoof of Big Fat Greek Wedding, but only just with the sci-fi element. And I just absolutely love that episode. Do you have one?
I think my favorite episode, and it's going to be another weird one, is when they go to the Indian reservation and they, was it a werewolf or?
It was, the name episode was Ben Wolf, and it was a Yanadushi.
Yes. And that one was my favorite one because Ben got a crush and he didn't know how to behave, and Gwen teased him, and then he was like, oh yeah, I can take care of this, no problem, and it being one of the toughest aliens that he encountered,
right,
and then he needed the help of everyone to help him to defeat it, although it got away.
Right.
But it was just a whole different dynamic for one of the episodes. It was very different if you think about it from any episode that the series had during that 3-year period.
Right.
But that's my favorite episode because of the comedy and the drama and Ben and his awkwardness and Gwen knowing he was awkward.
And then at the end.
I mean, just riding him and trying to embarrass him. And you tell me you like her.
Like, shut up! I don't like her. And then it was at the end, at the very end, it was like, it took you, it made you side with Gwen at the very end when Ben was kept turning into, I guess you could say the werewolf. And it was a thing, and he was kind of asking her out. She said he wasn't her type.
Right.
And then found out, said, oh, it's really cool you turned to aliens, you saved the world, but I always thought I could train you as the Indiana Jones. She's like, are you serious?
Right.
I guess she had Twilight Syndrome. She only liked him when he was the werewolf. She didn't even really care for him as a crime-fighting superhero, as a human or alien. She liked when he was a wolf, and he could train him like a pet. And Gwen was so upset, said, are you serious? You can't talk to my cousin like that. Only I can talk to my cousin like that. You're missing out.
Right? So all of those are the reasons why I love that episode. That's my favorite episode out of that incarnation of the series, definitely.
Oh, man.
Okay, so now you asked about favorite episodes. Let's talk about favorite aliens.
Okay. What are yours for the original?
Of course. Let's see. I think for the original, I'm going to let you go first while I think about it.
Okay. I think mine is Upgrade. At the time, I didn't have a favorite. I just like seeing all the aliens. And they kept increasing the amount of aliens only by probably like one a season. They started getting ones, and they lost one, was Ghost Freak because he was sentient. But
Ghost Freak was one freaky character.
Yeah, maybe that's why he's not in the reboot. Maybe he was too scary for smaller kids, and they had to take him out. I think Upgrade was my favorite. I didn't know at the time because there were just so many. I liked just seeing them fight. But I think it's Upgrade because of the powers he's got. He can just attach himself to any piece of machinery. He can make it his own. He become literally a transformer, and he can control everything just by being on it. And it was kind of like what they call like a mechamorph. I think that's what they called it. If I'm wrong, sorry. And yeah, he can control weapons, ships, vehicles, even small things like computers, and it would just be in his control. He could do whatever he wanted to it. He's like a living binary code.
Okay, let's see. Were there any others, or was that your absolute favorite?
I think that's it. And like I said, I know he had other aliens. Like the Heat Blast was cool. Cannonball's pretty cool. What's the other one?
I like Wild Mutt, I think, because
the dog.
he was so base, and he acted like a dog, and he always wanted Wild Mutt. Every time he's like, "Come on, Wild Mutt, Wild Mutt." Oh,
right. And then when they get Wild Mutt, oh, you picked that stinky dog. It's always made fun every time you pick Wild Mutt. Then only worked half the time because usually the villains were smart enough to defeat Wild Mutt. I was like, oh wow, maybe you shouldn't pick him as much as you think.
So I think that's why I'm gonna pick him. It's easier for me to pick for the other two series what's my favorite, but I'm gonna say Wild Mutt because there was just so much hilariousness that went into the episode whenever he would want him or when he would actually get him. So I'm going to say Wild Mutt just for that reason.
Okay.
There's another thing I wanted to mention. The voice actors.
Oh, yeah. The Tara Strong is Ben, and she was, perfect for him because I love half the dialogue he would say. Like, my favorite line is when they try to get a car, they said, we could have just gotten into one box that had the Suma Slammer's car if Gwen hadn't butt in with her big butt. I still remember that line years later.
And Gwen was done by Megan Smith.
Right, she was really well done in her role too. She has some great dialogue as well. And Grandpa Max was voiced by Paul Eating, and he's still in. And he was pretty much there for the other three series for Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, Omniverse. Unfortunately, they didn't have him come back for the reboot, but I will always see Grandpa Max voiced by this guy because he was well done. Yeah,
right. He was just perfect. He had the perfect a balance of everything in his voice, and whatever emotion that when Grandpa did show emotions, whatever emotions he had, it came through. The calmness, or if he was worried, or if he was upset, or if he wanted to portray strength. Paul Edding was excellent at just depicting what was going on the screen perfectly. So, yeah, and then let's talk about how I didn't know originally until much later on how Kevin Levin was in the series, but he was a much worse character in terms of his personality and his behavior than he was later on.
Right. And if you've seen the show, when it gets to the Alien Force series, he was kind of like the bad kid of the show. You thought Ben was bad because of the title, the lyrics in the song, but no, Kevin was the really bad kid because he would kind of hurt people to get what he wanted. And there was a point where he tried to frame Ben by turning into different aliens and frame him for all the heroic deeds he did. So now he's doing bad things, and they were hunting him. And he was pretty much a villain, a formidable villain for him, because he was pretty much equal to him as in having all of the aliens or having them all at once when he mutated.
Right. And I was going to say, you got to see kind of like a foreshadowing of him doing that in Ben 10 until Ultimate Alien, where he went just really bananas the same way that he did in the original Ben 10 show. But we'll talk about that more later when we get to Ultimate Alien. And he was an Osmodian too, but he didn't know it back then, right?
No. I think they found out later because they never addressed something like that in the show. If they did, and it's like some specific episode for like a second, then sorry about that.
So this show went off in 2008, and you pretty much thought that was the end of the series, right?
Right.
Okay. And then it was succeeded by my favorite, Ben 10 Alien Force, which aired from 2008 to 2010. And the series begins 5 years later after the summer vacation. That Ben discovered the Omnitrix, and it's being removed from him, and they never tell you why.
Yeah, that was strange. They never brought it. Not in the entire series. They would tell you. Why did he take off the watch? Did he just grow tired of being a hero? Was it becoming too risky and he had to take it off? Did someone force him? It's never explained why he took it off. It's just off. And I thought it was really hard to do it too, as they made in the first series. That was always the joke. Every time you try to break it off or something, it would just attach it. Now all of a sudden it's off. So that would be the only flaw. Never explain why it was off.
Also would have been a great opportunity for a movie showing just, how
maybe like a pilot movie
and what happened. So that you would, it would be an extra movie, an extra story, so you know what really happened in the gap. Unfortunately, they haven't done that. I think the first episode of this new series was great in terms of all the characters came back that you were familiar with, and you kind of got a really quick update on what was going on in their lives, and you could see how they matured and grown, and it was great. I think it was perfectly done, that first episode. We were like, wow, this is great. And the only question was, again, well, how did he lose the watch?
Right.
And that's the only thing was left unanswered. And then with the return of the series, of course, since they were older, you had two new voice actors doing Ben and Gwen, and Yuri Lowenthal did Ben,
and Ashley Johnson did Gwen.
Right.
And Greg Sipes was Kevin.
Right. Greg Sipes, Beast Boy!
Yep, or if you want to even go for another one, you go Michelangelo, or he's on Star too. But yeah, I think most of the time we're going to know him as Kevin.
Right. And he did a great job with Kevin. He made Kevin a really, really memorable character. He was this brooding, I won't call him emo.
Okay,
right.
He
was this brooding, dark, kind of bad boy character, and he acted really tough. And then you find out that at the same time, he was as brilliant as Gwen. Well, she was brilliant in one area. He was brilliant in mechanics and in technology and different things that you just didn't imagine. That when you saw him in the original incarnation, that he had that type of skill. But he, I guess maybe in a null void, he had time to think, or maybe when he got out, he learned a lot. But he actually turns out to be a really brilliant teenager. And his soft spot is, of course, Gwen.
Right.
We saw it coming a mile away, but his soft spot is Gwen.
Right. So, he wasn't just made of stone.
Right.
Or he could absorb it.
Or bronze. Or iron.
Or metal. Yeah, he could absorb it, but he wasn't made of it.
Right. So tell us, what sticks out differently from Alien Force versus the first series.
Now, I do know that it's a little darker than the original. The first one was a blend of action and comedy and sci-fi. This one is a little darker, but there's still moments of comedy in the dialogue or some moments, but it's not fully focused on that. There was more of a plot when they were trying to find Grandpa Max because he disappeared for like the first part of the series. And there was the threat of, there was only like a threat every season, like the Forever Knights, they were actually stronger than before.
Right.
Vilgax was back again, and they started having more threatening villains. They were finding plumbers, kids who were like literally kids of plumbers who were like an intergalactic police, but then were actually part alien and didn't know it, or part human and didn't know it.
And that was a really interesting addition to this series. That was like, wow, you know, I really enjoyed that when you would, as you say, you would see them, you would think they might have been just human, and then something would happen, or an event would occur, and then the powers would be revealed.
Right, like they had with that kid who was like a heat blast.
Right.
Where he said he woke up one day and he had flame power.
Right. So that was pretty good, but keep going,
And like I said, they were having a bigger story arc. They also had the DNA aliens and the hybrids.
Oh man,
they
and
were
those are some of the most disgusting villains I've ever seen.
Right, but yet they were the most, but they were superior to all the species in the universe. Like, oh, well, that's ironic. And that was actually pretty interesting too, putting the fate of the world on that, because they were intent on wiping out not just Earth, but everything else that wasn't hybrid. And
let's not forget Michael Morningstar.
Oh yeah, Michael Morningstar,
voiced by Will Wheaton from Star Trek: Next Generation. And now he's also awesome.
And then he becomes Dark Star for some reason. He turns hideous. Whereas he was beautiful, now he's hideous. He was this gorgeous, pretty blonde boy, and Kevin was jealous of him. And it was so funny. He would know it like he slammed the door in his face. You did that on purpose.
And he was sucking out the energy from all the girls that had crushes on him at the school. So again, so many different arcs and so many firsts in this series as well. And don't forget the kid who had a crush on Gwen.
Oh yeah, Cooper.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a little chubby kid at first.
In
the Alien Force, and he almost looked like he didn't grow up, like he's still 12 years old.
Right.
And
he was brilliant as well.
Yeah, and he had telekinetic powers, and the aliens had kidnapped him so they could build the machine faster. And yeah, he played a role in there. And who else did they meet?
And then we got to also meet the parents who we hadn't seen before.
Right, you got to see Ben's parents who finally found out he was doing all this work. You didn't find out he was a kid. And you saw Gwen's parents, of course, her grandma. You were starting to see more of the family, and it was more to it than just the people they met. It was just stuff in their family too. You got her cousin Sonny.
Right.
And just about everybody in their family's got something up with them.
So yeah, the cast became bigger and greater, and as you said, it got darker. But what I did like was how they, I guess, forgive the pun, upgraded the aliens, because you know he had a certain set when he was 10, but now that he's 16 or 15,
I think he's 15.
15, oh my gosh, he's got these aliens that are even more powerful, and he's learned how to work better with them and not just showboating like he did when he was 10. Now he thinks more. Now he understands that they're supposed to be used for good, and he learns that more importantly than him being a superstar is him saving the world and protecting its inhabitants. So let's talk about some of those aliens quickly.
That we like?
Yes. Okay. My favorite is easy this time. My favorite is Big Chill.
Oh, now you got to talk about that episode. Go ahead.
Yes, there's an episode. What's the name of it?
Actually, I'm not sure. It was like near the beginning. It was like near the beginning of the series, and it had something to do with prom.
Well, Ben becomes Big Chill, and during this episode, he's having blackouts where he's not remembering what's happened. He suddenly will be Big Chill, or he'll turn back and they'll go, you know, Ben, we saw you over here last night. He's like, no, I wasn't there. That wasn't me. It's it's someone else pretending to be me. And then you find out later that it is Ben, and Big Chill becomes a mommy and lays eggs and is protecting her young by eating metal. So again, another totally different take on a show and characters. And you go, oh, Big Chill's a mommy.
Like, stop it! he was becoming more feminine when he was still transforming. He was very feminine. He knew what. And he said, "No, you should dress up like this." He was eating pickles all the time. He said, "Did you hit your head or something?" he was just so, he was so feminine. He was proper. He was acting really different. He wasn't his usual Ben self.
Right.
He was becoming more proper because he was going through his little pregnancy.
So that was a favorite. And then you see all these little bitty baby big chills.
Baby chills.
Yeah, they're baby chills. And then they all take off and they leave the nest. But it's so hilarious how he was eating all this metal.
Right. I guess that was his pickles.
He was eating bumpers and cars and the supporting posts for buildings that were under construction and everything.
And then those are not my. And then it was funny. They brought the kids back later. And when he turned a big chill, the kids came back at some point like, "Oh my gosh!" And they grew up so fast. He's like, "Stop it!"
So for me, Big Chill, and actually for this series, I had a second favorite, and that was Swamp Fire. I don't know. I liked Swamp Fire. I guess every time. Swamp Fire!
Right.
And how you could, not decapitate them, but you
Well, you could, and they still grow back.
limbs and things out, and they would grow back, and how he would use the power of the earth and nature to defeat the villains.
And he had seeds that could grow.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought he was a cool character. So my two favorites are Big Chill and Swamp Fire from the Alien Force series. How about yours?
Okay, for mine, it would be Spider Monkey. And I think that was pretty much the only favorite I had, because all the while, for some reason I thought Spider-Man, maybe because of Ben's life, and it made me think of Spider-Man. And it was pretty cool. They called him Arachnid Chimp. So it was a literal Spider Monkey.
Right.
And he found there was a whole planet of them, and he met someone that was kind of like him. They thought he was another loner, and he thought he was a prince, and they turned out to be a jerk
and a crook,
and the powers were actually pretty insane because she spider webs out of the tail. It was very athletic. Yeah, it was kind of like an underrated character. I know because he's not a giant, strong one, but he was still very effective. And I kind of like how D. Bradley Baker did his voice, like, "Spider Monkey!"
Okay, we did not mention D. Bradley Baker in the first one. Let's mention him now because the awesomeness of D. Bradley Baker and doing these characters. You've got to tell them about him because I did not know that this man was this incredible in voice acting. So, well, I knew he was, his fame, but I did not know just how awesome it is how he does his characterization. So I'll turn it over to you, Rascal.
Okay, so he pretty much does almost all the aliens that Ben has. The only other person who kind of shares it is John DiMaggio. Over 70 aliens are voiced by 2 people. And in the first series, he wasn't really into them much. He had probably like a few voices, but not as many. They really did hire some other people to do the voices. But then they got to the second series, and all of a sudden, D. Bradley Baker was like half the aliens. And then they got John DiMaggio, and then as the list kept increasing, they just kept having the same 2 people do new aliens. So that pretty much was incredible because they sound like different people each and every time.
And what was most incredible to me and impressive was that he wasn't using computerization to alter his voice. This guy does his own characterizations using just his mouth and his throat and his vocal cords, and it's like, dang!
Oh yeah, she saw it in the voice actor documentary where you got to see him do it in the booth, and the only thing he probably used...
I know that voice?
Yeah, I know that voice. And he used like a vase if you need to echo his voice or something or make a deep sound. He had like a vase or a bottle or something, but he was doing everything himself. Even the animal voices, like you see in just about almost every show you watch. When there's an animal or an alien, he does the voice. Very rarely does he do a human, which is a shame because he's actually pretty good at doing human voices too, like when he was Tarlock on The Legend of Korra.
Yes, definitely. So yes, shout out to D. Bradley Baker. You are an awesome dude, and you need to have more and more and more work, and we hope your work never, ever, ever ends out. We hope you're 80 and 90 and still doing these voice characterizations for animals and characters.
Now, for the last thing we'll talk about Alien Force is, you said was that your favorite episode with Big Chill in it, or was it something else?
As there were quite a few episodes in this version that I really, really liked. And I don't think I can name them all. I'm not as great as you as naming the actual episodes, but I probably say there are at least about 8 or 9 that I really, really like, because they just had some really good writing and really good, I don't want to say adventures, because they weren't adventures, they were challenges.
Right, basically.
Right, and especially the arc with, as you mentioned earlier, the DN aliens, and the arc with Vilgax, and then you had the arc with Michael Morningstar. There were so many different arcs going on that they would keep returning to, that yes, there's a lot of different episodes. Because even the one we mentioned where Michael Morningstar was introduced, do you remember the name of that one?
Maybe it was Darkness, right? All That Glitters. That's what name. All That Glitters.
That's one of my favorites, because again, we talked about how he was, he was beautiful, and he gave this impression that he was this really good guy, and they had this mystery of why all these girls were being found, and they looked like zombies because he would suck all the energy out.
Right, like a little vampire.
Right, and then you find out it's him, and Gwen gets under his spell, of course. She looks at him, she's like, oh, yes, I was on a date with him. And Kevin's like, well, what about me? Right. And then you find out in the end, the only reason he really, really liked Gwen is because he realized she had so much power.
Right.
He just wanted her power.
He was obsessed.
He didn't like her. He just wanted her power.
He was like 80s Lotor. He was just obsessed with her. It was like, okay, bad touch, stranger danger.
So that's one of my favorite episodes. So tell me more about what you were going to say.
And I think my favorite would be, I had to really think about it because it was getting to near the end of the series. There was this one where they had got a couple of plumbers' kids, and they were supposed to be going through a training mission. It was kind of like, almost like an homage to Young Justice before Young Justice. And it showed that it looked like Ben had gone rogue on a ship, and he was threatening to destroy his own grandfather, and they were going to go there and save him, and they each had to fight him, and you find out later it was all a training mission. It's like, how will it go against, like, if someone went rogue, or someone who had to match their powers or abilities, and that was a challenge for them. So it was like one of the few episodes that didn't focus on the main cast, which are usually ones that are the best when the ones are not focused on the main characters, which happens a lot. And that was a pretty interesting one to see how all the kids put their skills to the test, how they would face a friend that would have gone rogue, and if they were ready to be real plumbers or to become trainers, because only like 4 or 5 of them, and one of them looked like thorns, one of them looked like celery, one of them had spikes, and one of them looked like heat blast. And that was
one with spikes looked like actually a porcupine.
And his name was Spike. So that's that was perfect then. And
that is a great episode.
Yeah, I think that one. Whenever we start rewatching, I think it'll probably be another one, but that's the one that comes to mind.
Okay, I like that one too, and I also like the one where Kevin, you find out he's friends with the possum. What was his name?
He was like Arjit.
Arjit, yeah, and Arjit was kind of like Kevin. He was, he was a trader,
con artist,
a trader and a con artist, but he would sell these parts that he got on the black market from alien ships in different places. And Kevin, again, had learned how to be, he was just technologically brilliant, so he built this awesome green car that he had with alien parts.
That keeps blowing up.
It blew up, but it could do all these great things, and he thought Arjit was his friend, and he learned that Arjit was not his friend. And that was one of the revealing episodes for Kevin, why I really like that, because he learned that the past life he had lived before he went to the Null Void, and kind of like he was doing after, where he actually started to have a change of heart, because he also learns that his dad was a plumber. So I really like that episode because it just had Kevin grow more, and you got to learn more about Kevin that you didn't know, and you learned that he had always been surrounded by this type of element in people, but he did not begin to have a different heart that grew 3 times that day like the Grinch until he met Kevin, and until he met Gwen and Ben and Grandpa Max later, and the same people who were responsible for helping him be sent to the Null Void were also responsible for his rehabilitation. And again, that's just another testament to the great writing in this series. And I'm sure there are more episodes I can think of. I can just keep going because, again,
there's
so
a
many
lot,
great
especially
ones.
because near the end they started coming with really creative ideas for aliens, and also going into the arc. I guess the last one I want to mention would be the one where Vilgax challenges Ben to a showdown that'll be broadcast across the galaxy, and it was probably the fate of Earth. and if he lost, then he would conquer it. If he won, he would leave.
Right.
And of course, he was a cheat because he was absorbing power from all these people he would defeat, so Ben couldn't beat him. And it was getting to a point where he actually couldn't beat him, and then all his friends had to jump in and help out because he was really bigger threat than he was in the first series because he was getting even more ruthless.
Because he was a teen when you first met him in the first
a little
series.
kid.
Right.
Yeah, now he's a teen, and it's still hard to beat him because he grew just as much as Ben.
Right.
And then the other one involving Gilgamesh would be where he went to him for help when Ghost Freak was taking over his planet.
Right.
And he's like, I don't want to do this, but I need your help. And at the very end, even after he saved his planet, he said, don't think this means we're friends. He's like, no, we're going right back to being enemies. We'll pretend this never happened. He said, that's agreed. And then, went right back to fighting each other. But for that small moment, he knew he was the only one that could help him.
Right. So this second series, Alien Force, stands out for a whole different set of reasons. And again, the many arcs, the character development, the stories, and just great storytelling makes this stand out as my favorite of the entire Ben 10 series. And I think it makes it stand out as well because of the theme. It is one of my favorite themes ever in cartoon history. This is one of the most awesome theme songs and intros ever for a cartoon series. And I've made Rascal watch it over and over and over. Okay,
it's like Just Friends. Only no lyrics.
It was so epic. And the epicness of the intro made me just wait in anticipation for what was going to happen every episode. And I knew the intro. I knew it back to front, sideways and everywhere, but it didn't matter. Every time that I hear that intro, even now, I get really excited about watching this series. So thank you guys for giving us another quality Ben 10 animated series in Alien Force. And so now we're going to move on to Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, which aired from 2010 to 2012.
Now, this had a shorter run, and I honestly think it's because of Dwayne McDuffie's passing. I think it probably would have gone a little longer if that hadn't happened. So it only had 2 seasons.
Yeah, I'm sure, just as it was a shock to us, I can't imagine how they felt when they were seeing this man every day and just being exposed to, the personality and from what we've read and understand that everyone seemed to like. So for this one, this took place after Ben's last battle with Vilgax, that resulted in the destruction of the Omnitrix.
And it didn't take too long after that, because I probably looked like a couple months later. And Ben, he replaced it with the new Ultimatrix. Oh, that's creative. It allows him to evolve into alien forms, into more ultimate forms, which to me were kind of unnecessary because the aliens are already powerful enough on their own. The ultimate forms didn't have much of a difference between the original. Like Swampfire turned into a tree,
and then Spider Monkey turned to a gorilla, which I hated,
and which didn't make sense because it's already, I guess, more strength, but I know almost every time the villain would still be stronger than the ultimate form. Like, what was the point of that? Cannonball turned to a silver ball or something.
Echo. What happened with Echo?
He looked like he was electronic. Now he was blue. He looks like something you would buy for your iPhone, for your speaker, your Echo iPhone Touch. And Big Chill just turned into Big Heat at this rate.
And I did not like the Big Chill formation.
He was like a flame. It was like flame and. Yeah, it was kind of strange. Not every single one had an ultimate form. And Walnut was red, and then he could finally speak. Like, what? Why couldn't he speak? Why couldn't he speak now?
Now, what I have to say was a good part of them deciding to do the Ultimate Alien, where he would have to hit his chest and it turned red, right? Was that they tried to find a way to improve upon what they had, and they didn't come up with a bunch of strange and obscure aliens that no one would know or wouldn't like. They tried to work with what they had. I thought that was a good idea. I just didn't like the versions of the upgrades. The upgrade was a good idea, but I just didn't care for the upgrades themselves.
But it wasn't necessary. And also in this one, the world knows Ben 10 is a superhero and he's a celebrity now, so that everyone's now he's being invaded by TMZ and whatever. And this one little kid told the whole world he was an
10-year-old or 9-year-old.
Right, a 10-year-old. Kevin was pissed off beyond belief. And there was a newscaster who couldn't stand him. His child's hero, was it?
And those
Captain
are some of Rascal's favorite episodes.
Yeah, Captain Kangaroo couldn't stand him. There were a lot of people that you didn't know that were part of the public and that really despised Ben and would do anything to get him out of the picture. It was like, dang, you just as bad as the superpowered villains.
Right. And then we had the Osmosian, Agregor?
I think it's Agregor.
Agregor. Yeah, and he was pretty pretty evil. All he wanted to do was harvest the powers of the other aliens that were here, that people didn't know were here, and some that were trying to get back to their planets, and use them all for himself. And he didn't care how he did it, if he had to imprison them, if he had to hurt them, even if he had to kill him. He just didn't care.
And he chose 4 specific ones. One was, but I'll just call them by the alien names that Ben uses, because they got pretty intricate names, and it matched what the species were or their powers. There was NRG, who was like a Russian heat alien who was encased in a metal suit because he ate power.
And was such a great backstory. That episode was just a fascinating backstory.
And you saw, they got thrown in episode 2, and then there was one they called Armadillo, but I think he was called Andreas, and he was
like the Andreas fault in California.
Right. And he was a giant yellow, looked like a construction machine, and he could make earthquakes happen. There was one who was a peaceful turtle-like alien. I remember, I think they called him Terraspin, Galapagos, like Galapagos.
Right.
And then he would make wind, and then there was one they called Amphibian. I'm sorry, I don't remember the real name. And he was like a jellyfish alien, control electricity
through his body.
Right,
you could see it.
And so he wanted those powers specifically so he could become unstoppable. And he wanted the Infinity Map, and that went into a whole other story. I mean, every time one arc ended with him, another one started. It was him kidnapping the aliens, then they had to find him, then they had to stop him getting the Infinity Map, then they had to stop him from getting the Infinity Map, they had to stop him getting baby alien egg, they had to stop, it just kept going on. He was
like a very sick psycho avatar.
He just kept going and going, like, dang, how far is this guy gonna go?
Right. He wanted his ultimate prize.
Right.
He wanted the ultimate prize where he would be in total control and ruling everything.
Right.
You know, that's just one old tired cliche.
Right.
But they did it so differently for this character that it seemed new and interesting, even though it was a tired cliche. So again, a testament to the writing and the storytelling of the writers for this show.
Right. And
we got to find out more about Ben. We didn't think there was even more to find out about Ben and Gwen and Kevin and Grandpa Max, but here they came bringing on some more on. We learned that Gwen has a brother named Ken.
Yeah, your brother name is Ken, Gwen, and Ken Tennyson. What's your parents' name? Sven and Jen? I'm talking to you, Ben. Like, your family has a pattern of rhyming your names.
and Kevin's name was Kevin
Ethan Levin. Yeah, your name is Kevin E. Levin? What the heck? They told you don't tell anybody.
So
and what else they had? They also had other characters that got more spotlight, like Professor Paradox,
who I love. If I had a rap name, it would be Professor Paradox.
And I love one of his lines where he literally can travel through time and space and dimension. He's just pretty much has control of it for himself and just uses it to study and for the greater good rather than being a supervillain. And that one, like, my favorite line is that he got trapped in time and he went insane. Then he said, eventually I grew tired of that and went back to sanity. And then he started studying. Like, I didn't think that was possible, but okay. And
what was really interesting about him too is that the actor, and I feel so bad. Do you remember his name? But the
unfortunately,
actor
no. We've seen his
voices
name, though.
it. I know that he plays. He's a scientist on NCIS, but he's actually an actor that is from one of our Nana's favorite shows called The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And I remember her saying, because she said a million times, his name was Iri Kuriaki was the character's name. So this man, who is like in his 80s, is voicing this character. And it sounds so natural and so great. And I think, again, another testament to this show, they had voice actors of all ages and from all walks of life doing characters convincingly and awesomely. So I just wanted to mention that because you don't have that happening now.
Right.
Where there are a lot of much older voice actors. And, of course, we're not speaking in terms of Frank Welker, who is just,
brilliant.
He's brilliant and he's at the top of the line. And then you also have Peter Cullen.
Yeah.
And he's also on a level by himself. But you don't have a lot of animated shows that take and use the talents of these really classic actors. So, and it's amazing how you can listen to them and their voices haven't changed.
Right.
They don't sound any different. You couldn't convince me, if I didn't know any better, that Frank Welker was not a teenage boy. Him voicing Fred from Scooby-Doo. You couldn't convince me that this was not a teenage boy, but you know better. And Peter Cullen's voice still has that deep baritone, and it hasn't changed, and it hasn't aged. And I just like to say, you know, it's great that Ben 10 decided to use this actor to portray this character, because he's a memorable character for Professor Paradox.
And we also got to see Ben 10,000.
Richard McGonigal.
Okay, good. Finally got it. Okay. There was also, for a short time, we had the original and in the new one, we had Ben's future self, Ben 10,000.
Yes, Dudley.
Who Dudley is proud of being represented by. And he was a pretty good character, because you saw him when it was first, and something happened in his life where he stopped having fun being a hero, and he was really serious. He wasn't nice, and then little Ben had to, you know, help him and like realize why he became a hero, and you know, because he was no longer himself. And then you see later on, you know, he had his old personality back, and it stuck with him even with all the incarnations. And he was big and muscle. Like every time they got a little wimpy kid, they turn out to be muscle. Like 20 years later in the future. Like, it's like Ron said in Kim Possible, why is everyone so ripped in the future?
Those are adult goals. But I think that's another turn to the difference in the series with the time travel. Back then when that was done, it wasn't a trope that was being overused and overdone. It was really different. You had past Ben 10, present Ben 10, future Ben 10, and it worked. The way that it was written, it worked. Every element of those episodes worked. And of course, you have to remember they also had the same with Gwen. We got to see a future Gwen, you know, past, present, and future Gwen. And her voice actress changed, too.
Yeah, we said it was Ashley Johnson, right?
Oh, you're right. So her voice actress
changed. She's still the same from Alien Force. They pretty much had everybody from Alien Force come back. And when the way it ended, it had a really big grand finale, fighting Vilgax one last time. And then with the ending with another new Omnitrix, looked like something you see now, which was another head of its time, which ended this and led into the final series.
Well, let's go back a little before that, because one of the big arcs that this particular series had, that again was a first, and it really worked, and it kept you on the edge of your seat every week waiting, is when Vilgax decided he was going to become this fake god Dagon.
Yeah.
And he had conned the Forever Nice into believing that he was this omnipotent fake god, and they were worshiping him, and they had found him once he'd gotten defeated and helped nurse this fool back to hell, and then they were like, oh well, he's Dagon and he's brought to life and blah blah blah,
then he's gonna destroy the world again.
Exactly. It was just Vilgax being his own self. And at first I can't remember, was it Kevin or Gwen or Ben, one of them actually thought maybe it was Dagon, but then Ben figured out it wasn't. It was Gwen.
Ben was the only one that knew. Was like, no, this is Vilgax.
So that was a great arc, and it went on for how many episodes? Well, multiple episodes.
Several. I think up until the end of the series. It was like halfway through season 2 till the end of the series.
So that was great. I mean, think about it. This is a kid's cartoon, although, you know, many adults watch it. But it was a kid's cartoon, and they took this type of arc where they had, you know, these people that were supposed to be above everyone else, the Forever Nice. They were, you know, holier than thou and better, and they thought they were powerful, and they were brilliant, and they were the ones who were supposed to direct how the world happened. They got conned by Vilgax, you know, just a horrible villain whose only aim again was to control the world as bad as theirs. But he conned these so-called brilliant people into believing he was a fake god. And then you saw all along how he was advancing his plot through them. They would get these things he wanted, or they would get these things he needed, and they said they were helping him to do his work, and they were so proud. And it was just Vilgax being Vilgax.
Right.
And this was
nothing changed.
Right. Yeah. And this kid's cartoon took it through this dark arc until he was able to get well enough and then take his own form again and then create the havoc he did before. But this was awesome. And don't forget the kid that had a crush on Gwen.
Cooper.
Don't forget to tell him about Cooper.
Okay, last guy. He went through a growth spurt and he became super muscle. His voice dropped. His clothes got hit and fit. He still had his telekinetic powers, and he was voiced by Chris Pratt. I could not believe it. And he still had a crush on Gwen, so it was still kind of like that part
of himself. Kevin started getting jealous. Yeah, he's like, before he was like, oh, he's just a kid. He's a good kid. He's a good kid. He doesn't say that now.
Yeah, so, yeah, and he became a big help near the end, too, because they started having, when they get to the end of the series, they have all the people that helped them, or they've helped, and they come help for the final battle.
Right. So this was just another incarnation that was just awesome. I know I keep saying awesome, but this show was awesome, and every time that this series had a new, a sequel, it was even better than the last one.
Right.
And it's just the writing and the thought process that went into continuing the story of these, I guess you say 3 primary characters, 4 if you count Grandpa. It was just incredible. Right. And I mean, wow. I haven't personally seen any other show that has been able to do this. And they've had since 2005 to just keep developing and keep working. And a lot of shows after Ultimate Alien and after the death of one of his primary who helped to create it, who, like you said, produced it and developed it, they would have fallen apart. But it has to be a testament to their love of the show and love of the characters. They're still continuing to go, which leads us, favorite aliens, we said not many because of the upgrades.
Yeah.
But, yeah, my
they're pretty much the same because it's still the same continuity, just like a little bit of time has passed.
Oh, and we didn't mention, there's 2 other things we need to mention quickly. The crossover with Generator Rex.
Oh, yes. There was one called Heroes United, and at the same time airing with Generator Rex was on at the same time. Ben was transported to Rex's world, and they kept thinking he was an Evo, and he wasn't. They had to work together to stop Rex's brother's was a nanite creation. It was sucking it out of everything, becoming a monster, and they had to team up.
And then when he went to Generator Rex's world, the animation for Ben was like Generator Rex.
Right.
So it was great. It's on iTunes. You may be able to find it on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, it's a great watch. And the last thing we need to mention is the addition of Albedo.
Yeah, who was, I guess, the evil twin, but it's not a brother. It was actually a gray matter who tried to make his own Omnitrix and it went wrong. He ended up getting Ben's DNA and the alien. So, every time he would go time out, it would turn back to Ben. And he was so angry that he couldn't go back to being himself because he was permanently stuck like that because of the watch, and they were connected, and he would tuck it out on Ben, was trying to do everything he could to ruin his life and turn him into a villain. So for the difference for him, he was a white-haired, red-wearing evil Ben.
Albino, yeah. So, and it was an important arc that took place over many, many episodes. So I just wanted to shout out to those because they were all integral in making this series, this particular series, great. So that leads us up to the final incarnation that we're going to discuss of series that we've actually watched for Ben 10, and that's Omniverse.
Yep, and so this one, it kind of goes to just like a year later, even they look completely different. The art style's completely changed, and it only takes place a year after the 1 year after the original series and 1 year after Alien Force, and it keeps alternating between when he's 11 and when he's 16 to show what happened, why this happened, and explain. And in this one, Gwen and Kevin are no longer in the show because Gwen goes to college and Kevin moves away too, so he can be closer to her.
And Grandpa Max just is not the same character, so he doesn't have the same input and working with him.
He's running this big time plumber's base, which now gets a bigger focus, and Ben gets put with pretty much like a parody of a buddy cop movie named a guy named Rook, who's supposed to be, I think they're supposed to be a parody of Rush Hour, and he's supposed to be Jackie Chan the way they got it, because he really doesn't know a lot about Earth slang and phrases, and that's pretty much a joke. He doesn't understand most of anything about Earth, and Ben's like the silly one, like Chris Tucker, the crazy one, and Jackie Chan or Rook is like the calm one.
Right.
I found that really odd because the dynamic he had was fine, and I understand that Dwayne passing away probably affected your storytelling a little bit, but you didn't have to throw them out of the story. They were still in the show, but they were no longer main characters. They showed up probably like once or twice a season, I'm guessing, because this thing ran on for 6 seasons, and I could not believe it.
And the animation is really different for them too.
Right.
I mean, Gwen takes on a look where before, you know, she had a classic look. Now she's got kind of like this nerdy punk girl look.
Yeah.
And the same for Kevin.
And he looked like he was like Slash without his glasses.
So they,
like,
you know,
what the heck's wrong with these designs?
it's like they went totally different with this one. But we do have a favorite episode from this series that we want to discuss, and it's called Bros in Space.
That's correct.
Bros in Space, where Ben goes to Rook's planet to help his family with some challenges that they have.
Right. And it looks like his planet was kind of taken after Japanese culture, which explains why in episode Ben bowed, but they felt disrespected, which didn't make sense. But it looks like the design of the planet, the way that the species lived, the type of voice actors they chose, it all took after Japanese culture, which was pretty creative. And the ways that they lived were not ways of Earth, and they really did not like people from other planets or from Earth, so it was a kind of an undertone of that, especially with Ben, because Rook's father could not stand Ben, honestly.
And I think, unfortunately, well, I won't say unfortunately, I think they took this episode to try to give their take on, and I don't know if it's necessarily racism, it may be
maybe being judgmental.
There's another word I'm looking for. Give me a second. Not racism, but how people don't like people that are different from them. And it didn't have anything to do with Ben's look or his skin color. He was from another planet.
Right, and that was
he didn't think that he understood their ways, and that he didn't know how to get things done the way they did it. They were doing differently. It was just a total, that's what I'm looking for. It was a total rejection of someone else's culture and everything else.
Right, because within the episode, Ben did things his way. Not that he didn't respect their way, but he thought it was faster. And every time the father would not be pleased with him, and he would tell him, like, you need to get rid of him. And he wouldn't call him, he wouldn't even call him an earthling or human. He would call him otherworlder. He wouldn't even have the respect to call him by his species. He's not even a thing that's worth mentioning, and that was pretty harsh, even though it wasn't the main focus of the story. It was something else, but that was definitely blatantly obvious of how he felt.
But it worked as far as being an element, because by the end, you see that Ben decides to try it his way. He's like, okay, my doing it my way isn't working. I'm going to respect these people, and I'm going to try to do what he tells me to do. And again, that shows, even for this character in this version, this series, a growth of Ben. You think about Ben and Ben 10 and Ben 10 Alien Force. In the beginning, he wouldn't have done it, but in this one, he says, I'm going to just do what they tell me to do. I'm going to do it their way. And when he does it their way and it succeeds, it's not so much because he used his watch in one of his aliens, but it's because he used empathy and cooperation to work with Rook's dad and his people to defeat the enemy the way they needed to. And once he did that, the dad was like, you're okay.
Right.
And his whole outlook changed on Ben.
Right.
So I think they used it to their advantage. That's why I said I don't think it was racism.
No.
It was just, I don't like what you're representing because you're not what I'm familiar with.
Right.
I don't hate you because, my son is with you. Great, but, I don't
he just doesn't like him.
Right. And but it changed in the end because of Ben and his growth and his maturity, working with them on their the way that they do things.
Right.
And not depending on his watch.
Right.
Which was also something that was a nice addition to this storyline.
And it kind of, the thing was, from the episodes we've seen, they're not in order. So it kind of switches back and forth, not only to him being 11 and being 16, but also his personality. Sometimes he'll act like he is from Alien Force. Then sometimes he'll act like he's 11. And it's a little bit confusing because it's like, how much growth have you had? Because there's sometimes you think he's learned and then he reverts back for a minute. Right. It's kind of confusing of how this works. And plus stuff he learned when he was 11. Apparently it was 2 years he was on the road instead of 1.
Right.
And dealing with these new aliens, which were really, like I said, really more, I guess, in depth.
I think what's strange for me is how, from the episodes we've seen, he seems to rely on 2 main aliens, and I don't know the name of the black one with the little antenna that comes out.
I keep saying Livewire, it's Shockwave.
We see him more than any other alien next to Accelerate, which is voiced by the
No, it's not. In the reboot, he's voiced by John Keaton. Joy Lowenthal does the voice of Accelerate 2 and a few other aliens.
My apologies.
But, I keep saying Livewire, good grief. It was, what did I just say? It was... It wasn't Livewire, it was... Okay, it was Feedback, I think, or something. If it's not, you can tell me in the comments, because I keep thinking Livewire like it's that villain from DC. They said that was his favorite alien, even to a point where he was getting obsessed with using, he didn't want to use any other alien except that one, and he got to a point where he lost it. He was obsessed with using that alien, and it was becoming a problem, because he refused to fight with any other alien besides that.
Right.
And then he finally learned later on, when he lost it, that he didn't need to rely on that particular alien anymore. And I thought it was kind of strange. Like, I didn't know he picked favorites. I guess everyone does, but
I guess in this series, yeah.
And
so we look forward to watching some more of this particular series and learning more about how these 2 Bens work in, challenges.
Right.
And the only thing I have to tell you, I do not like the animation for some of the characters, like Grandpa Max with the black eyes. He just looks creepy. He looks, he looks like he's, it's just weird.
And they lose, and then the kids don't have pupils, but they have irises, and the grown-ups don't have, irises, but they have pupils, so I guess maybe you lose it when you get older.
So some of them are strange and some of them aren't. But again, it's a great testament to how Man of Action and Cartoon Network are continuing the legacy that they created with Dwayne McDuffie, in the beginning.
And the one last thing I want to mention is that, 2 things I want to mention is that the style of it changed. They said it was supposed to be going back, playing homage to the original Ben 10 series. But it looks like they did way more than just going back. Because there are times where it's completely goofy. It's not just like a blend. It's like just off the wall humor, like parodying comedy movies kids would know. And it looked more, I believe it was supposed to be more like a Saturday morning cartoon, which is why it was very colorful.
And based on having been a Saturday morning cartoon watcher, I would have to say yes, it does have that feel. And the
villains were more animal-like. All of his aliens were more animal-like. That one was made of Legos, one was a pterodactyl, one was a chicken hawk. They had an alien chicken, a squid. They had some of the other villains back, but
I think it's...
And they had, like, the plumbers. One was a parody of the Incredible Mr. Limpet. Even with a guy sounding like Don Knotts.
There is no kid that's going to know about the Incredible Mr. Limpet unless, like Rascal, they've watched the movie with their Nana or their parents or someone older who knows who the heck Don Knotts is. But great imitation. Great. I have to say, when I saw it, I was like, this is great, because it, automatically Incredible Mr. Limpet, and he sounds just like Don Knotts. So
yeah, even though it was unnecessary, at least they made it work.
Well, maybe the person who came up with this idea or who likes the character loves Don Knotts and just wanted to do, like you said, homage to his character or give him some type of tribute, because he died a couple years ago. So maybe that is why he's in here, because it reminds someone else of their childhood and characters they like. So it could be a good thing.
Okay.
And another thing I wanted to mention that we failed to mention was the introduction, I think in just 2 episodes, it could have been 1, forgive me, it may be in 1, of Alien X.
Oh yeah, I think he's in this series too, but doesn't play as a big role.
We won't talk about him here. Jess what he did in Ultimate Alien and how we had never seen him be used,
right,
and why he couldn't be used again.
Okay, well, for this one, if you watch the intro for the first couple episodes, you notice that the final alien in the intro was always blacked out. They even had promotions for it saying there was Alien X was coming soon. He's his most powerful alien, but there's a catch, and you have to watch the episode to find out what it is.
And we won't spoil it for you.
And the way they did it was pretty interesting, and you see why he will rarely use this alien. He is powerful, but the catch is almost not worth it.
Well, they said rarely, but after what happened in this episode, did they use him again?
Yeah, like once or twice in Ultimate Alien. I think he started showing him more in Omniverse. I don't know if they took out the part of what happens, the consequences of using the alien or not, because it's more Saturday morning feel. But yeah, they stopped using him after a while, after like the 10th episode.
Because when they first saw what he could do, Gwen said, "We're gonna have to start using this guy more often."
Yeah, now
and
you
then
can't.
It went to Havoc, and then it was like, what the heck? And you just have to watch it because it's such, I was saying, iconic episode. We don't want to ruin it for you watching. So if you've never seen it, get online or go on demand, with your
DVD,
local provider, and watch the episode. And what's the name of that episode with Alien X, first one?
I think X equals Ben plus 2.
Yes, that's
like an equation.
Good job. So take a look at that one. And again, you'll see just how they have managed to keep this franchise fresh and going, and the legacy continuing. So again, thank you, Dwayne McDuffie. Thank you, Cartoon Network. Thank you, Man of Action. Thank you, all the voice actors who are involved in all these incarnations. And I'm still going to give a shout out to Josh Keaton for doing Accelerate in the new Never Should Have Been series. Josh Keaton, yes!
The one thing I want to say before we close out Omniverse is that we saw one episode called Rad. I want to ask you, in case we don't know because we haven't seen a lot of episodes, what was the point of having a bounty hunter duck named Red Duzman, voiced by, sound like Droopy? At this whole joke, he was a duck. That was the whole joke. He's a duck that you don't want to mess with. Like, what was the point of him?
That was a strange episode. And the hippie alien that he was, the alien spider or whatever it was that he was chasing down.
Yeah, and then he was freed by a hippie alien that was like Wildvine.
That remind you of the dude from The Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
And again, what kid's gonna know this reference?
I guess only for the adults.
It must be The Big Lebowski.
That was weird. I mean, I'm like, why is he a duck? And everyone was scared of him, so he was a character to be taken seriously, but except for the audience, because it's a duck. Unless he's supposed to be Howard the Duck. Please don't bring that back, because no one wants to remember that.
No. So, that is it for this week's episode.
Yeah.
Join us next week when we cover one of our all-time favorites, Shaolin Showdown! And Chase Young.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, she's definitely talking about that, so you might want to maybe grab a book when she does that. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mama Entertainment.
Hope you have a toontastic day.
Peace.
And reporters sitting flashing lights. Trying to walk around, man, who the hell are you? What you wanna do? My man, it's on you. Man, it's on you. With her in my dreams, she was my queen. A castle in the mountaintops, rivers and streams. Plucking sunlight from the sky in my pocket. Give it to you later on in the form of a locket.